Hello, all of you. Good evening. Today we have to familiarize ourselves with the last theory that is given in your syllabus, and it says the pluralist theory of state. Okay, pluralist theory. Now, don't get confused with what is pluralist view of sovereignty and all, because that we have to see elsewhere, and we have to study something called sovereignty in your syllabus. There is this word mentioned specifically what sovereignty is and what it talks about and so on and so forth. So there we shall see Boudin's view on sovereignty, what is Cotillard's view on sovereignty, what is Austin's view on sovereignty, and also the pluralist view on sovereignty. So that is something very different. But what actually pluralism is, Pluralism, pluralism. So what is this pluralism actually, which it actually supports like kind of more than one dominant view. That is why India is also often referred as a pluralist democracy, which means that not one view is dominant. There are several other, even some contrasting claims that emerge, and all of them are to be respected and adhered to a certain extent. Of course, being a parliamentary democracy, whichever party gets the required majority is able to form the government in India, and so in different states under Vidhan Sabhas. But the underlying feature is that we are a pluralist democracy. So pluralist essentially mean that there will not be one dominating view. But when it comes to pluralist theory of state, try to understand this. Now, of everything that we have studied about state, all the theories, remember our first class when we discussed the four essential components of state. I hope you do view the four essential components of state, and from there to the liberal, to the neoliberal, to the Marxist, to the post-colonial, to the feminist. Today, pluralist theory. So, what is essential for a state? Apart from that four essential feature, what is an essential trait of state? If I ask you this way, what is an essential trait of state? Someone please tell me. Welfare is the intention. Again, governance is state in practice. State has vested in itself sovereignty, right? State has vested sovereignty in itself, correct? It is also there in the four essential feature. And when we say state has sovereignty, then what kind of sovereignty are we referring to? What comes to your mind when I say sovereignty? It has the freedom, the autonomy to take, yes, correct, its own decision without any outside influence. Pluralist will attack this sovereignty. Pluralist will attack this sovereignty in itself. They will say, because state has undivided, unfragmented sovereignty, that is why state will have dictatorial tendencies. Okay, so let us curb sovereignty. So how do you curb sovereignty? When you fragment it, when you divide it into two or more than one parts, then you actually limit this tendency of state, which is the repository of entire sovereignty. Sovereignty as a monolithic entity. Entire sovereignty is vested in state. Pluralists are against this view. This is what the pluralist theory of state is. This is the essence. Okay, this is the essence. Now, why they say so, and what would happen if something like that happens, and what are the criticisms is what we will see as per our syllabus. Okay, you understood the essence that pluralists do not like undivided sovereignty resting with the state. Are we clear on this? So let us start it. What is the pluralist theory? The essence I have already told you without the slides. Now slides to make these points, so that why do we put slides? I can go on and on because you see the same thing here, and then you can relate with it, and it reinforces into your mind. This is the importance of text. And then again I'll send this text in the group. Okay, now you see. Pluralist does not hold that the state is contradictory in nature, contrary to the Marxist. Why contrary to the Marxist? And second point is, state is vulnerable to numerous influences from various groups in society. This is what Marxists also believe in. So first point is contrary, the second point is somewhere in conformity with the Marxist. Pluralist theory indicates that political power should be regarded as analytically distinct from economic power, and in contrast to elitist, power is not concentrated in the hands of a single group, but widely dispersed among a variety of group and actors. Exponents, the names are there. Jane Figgis is there, Lasky, Harold Lasky, the biggest one, Ernest Parker, G.D.H. Cole, E.D. Lindsay, Duguid McIver, and many others. So what we are understanding here. First thing, which is in stark contrast to the Marxist, state is not contradictory. Why stark contrast to Marxist? Because what did Marxists believe? State is like an authority thrust upon you. State shall wither away is what Karl Marx said. That was classic liberal. Yes, you remember that comparison. So state in itself is a liberal, is evil, not even a necessary evil what classic liberals believed in. Marxists believe that state is purely an evil. State should be done away with. You know what Karl Marx further said? Again, we'll study it in Marxism. State will be kept with wooden axe in museum. Now, which things are kept in museum? Which have become type of extinct. So a state will become such an extinct object that it will kept with wooden axe. Wooden axe is no longer being used in museum for people to come and see. Actually, Engels said that, Friedrich Engels said that, but then there is no distinction, at least when it comes to Marxist theory, between Marx and Engels. So this is their view on state. State shall wither away. State will be done away with. When? After dictatorship of proletariat comes. And that is one of the bitter critique of Marxism is that in even all these Marxist state becomes stronger. It never withers away. It is never kept in museum. Okay. So first point is contrary to the Marxist. Second point, state is vulnerable to numerous influence from various groups in society. This Marxists also believe in. And they believe that state has an undenying influence of the bourgeois group, the capitalist group. So here, pluralist and Marxist are same. First point, they are different. Now, it indicates that power should be regarded as analytically distinct from economic power. Okay. So here it says that distinct from economic power. Again, Marxists believe that the entire crux lies with the economic power. If the economic factors are within your control, everything else will fall under your control. No, there is no difference, Aditya. Actually, capitalist is a subset of bourgeois class. Okay, bourgeois can also include rich farmers. Those farmers who are owing acres of land will be bourgeois farmers. So, capitalist is just a subset of bourgeois. Got it? Bourgeois means who has access to resources, and it can be anyone other than capitalist also. So again, what it says that power is not concentrated in the hands of a single group, but widely dispersed among the variety of groups and actors. Again, you see, and these variety of actors tend to influence the state. So power is divided among different groups, and accordingly, the one who holds more power will have more influence. The one who holds less power or has will have, of course, have less influence. So this is what the pluralist theory is, and based on this very assumption, these are the assumptions actually on your slide. These are the assumptions. Like what would be the assumption of Marxist theory? That state is an evil, state is an unnecessary thing. Here the assumption is state is a necessary thing. Okay, and of course there is influence from different stakeholders as per the power sharing. And here are the names, 2 to 3 names you remember, not all. I have put most of the scholars, but remember just 2 to 3 names. You remember Lasky, okay, and you also remember Barker and Cole, because Cole will also come in socialism and Barker will again come. So there are some common names which you will get used to these names. You will get used to this name once we are done with WPT and political ideologies, because there are some very famous names in political science which tend to repeat themselves whatever we are studying. So these names will be repeated. It's just a beginning right now. This slide is okay with all of you? Anyone having any doubt here? Two very simple points. 2 to 3 very simple points are here. Analytically distinct from economic power. This is what pluralists believe. Marxist would say political power is synonym for economic power, and elitist believe that power is concentrated in the hand of few. See, here are 2 points. First point is from here. I think I should have used better punctuations here. That's why. Okay, I'll explain it. Read with me. Pluralist theories indicate that political power should be regarded as analytically distinct from economic power. Stop here. Till and you stop. So someone believes that economic power is same as political power. Who? The Marxist. Pluralists say no, 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 no. Political power is very, very different from economic power. You might not have economic power. How do you explain the concept of the influence of church, the power that the Pope has? Is it economic? Yes or no? It's not. Vishnu? Okay, you have given the answer. The power that Brahmins used to yield in ancient India, was it economic? Come on, know your history. It was not economic. Term that the Dharma Shastras have used, we'll study it in IPT, Indian Political Thought, is Daridra Narayan. They have equated Narayan, Bhagwan Vishnu, to Daridra, that is poor. So the power of Brahmins in ancient India was anything but economic. They used to live on Dakshina, right? Because they had the Vidya, the knowledge. So how can we say that political power is very similar to economic power? Aren't Marxists wrong? Yes or no? Just these two examples you take, you will understand. So when Marxists believe that every power is a manifestation of economic power, I give you two examples. Influence that the Pope currently has and influence that Brahmins used to have on ancient India. Don't give current because because currently 70 years of functioning democracy, I think Brahmins have become more marginalized. Okay, so don't say current India, say ancient India, the later Vedic to Buddhist era. Okay, you have to anyway study it in your ancient history. So now you understood, Vishnu, all of you. So I'm moving at this slide. Cruelly stated that sovereignty resides not with the state, but it resides with many other institutions. There exist many socio-political, cultural, economic institutions in society, and many of these institutions are prior to the state. For example, family and church are prior to state. Now, something similar to Aristotle. There can be various sources of political power. Therefore, a single group do not have monopoly of political power. See, sovereignty resides not with the state. Everyone in theory of power, we have seen unfailingly that sovereignty lies with state. Pluralists are saying no, it is with the numerous other institutions. Okay, it is with the numerous other institutions that are there. Like church is there, family is there, so many things are there. And institutions, you see, society itself is an institution. And the various stratas within that society, like class and caste hierarchy. That's an institution. In India, we have upper caste, backward classes, scheduled caste. Again, it's an institution in itself, right? Different layers of caste hierarchy in society. Then there are classes: rich class, poor class, middle class. Again, manifestation of different stratas of society. So all of them have certain influence. Then there is class based on occupation, the farmer, the industrialist, mainly the capitalist class, the workers, the below poverty line people, the students. You see the protest that is going on, postpone NEET and other exams. You must have seen that. And today some people were also saying that postpone UPSC exam also, civil services, because we are living. How many of you are in favor of these things? So student lobby is again there. My opinion is, if you are very much concerned, then don't appear for the exam. Those who want to appear, why do you want to stop them? Why waste a year? Already so much time has been wasted. Alok Srivastava is a lawyer and he keeps sending PILs. Okay. Supreme Court has said that make this net online. But tell me something, if you make it online, you have to go to the center, or will you appear for exam in your home, just like we are doing it? Then it has to be an open book exam. And once you go to the center, how does that matter? It's an online or an offline exam? Yes or no? Once you go to center, how does that matter? It's an online or an offline exam. And if it's an online exam, then it has to be an open book when you are supposed to take the exam from the comfort of your home. Hope you all agree. Understood all of you? What is, how does that matter? I was often wondering because people are so much carried away by sentiments. Make it online. I said, if you go to center, does it matter you are clicking on the OMR sheet or ticking from your pen? Common sense. Now, so what I was telling you that there are different institutions that exert their influence. See, some students are hell bent that no, will not appear for exam. Okay, and they are also saying that it is causing us distress, and we are already very distressed because of Corona. So, HRD Minister Dr. Nishan, in on 5th of July, he released a video saying that we'll take it in September. Now they don't want even in September. So, and Supreme Court has to step in and advise government that make it. Someone asked, my lordship, how will you make it online? So, influences are there. I'm not sure about that, Santosh. I need to check this, the veracity of your. Maybe that might be a possibility. But the message that I want to convey all of you that there are different institutions that have different levels of influence on the state. That is why state is actually not having sovereignty. The various stakeholders exercise their influence. Different classes, different caste, religion, regions, occupation, students, farmers. So because of their influence, state functions. So state is not a sovereign. Again, a stark contrast to all other theories that we have studied till now. Right? Like family and church are prior to state. Of course, family and church are historically speaking prior to state. Religion is before state. Family is before state. Okay. So there can be various sources of political power, and a single group do not have monopoly on the political. See, in democracies, political power, theoretically speaking, comes from the public elections. They choose the EVM buttons, and the party of the candidate gets hold of the office. But there are various sources they are saying that still you can be in the office, but you cannot be in the government. You know, these are two different things. So there are various sources of political power, not only because a person or the public when it decides to elect a government or to vote for a particular person, there are n number of factors that come into play, right? Before a Lok Sabha election or before a Vidhan Sabha election, there are certain criteria on every one of us vote, right? So there are various sources. There are certain criteria, n number of, maybe hundreds of criteria, on which we decide that so and so candidate and so party will fulfill most of these criteria, and of the all available choices that I have, this one is sounding the best. So there are various sources, not one. This point also okay with all of you? The slides. Now moving ahead from here, are there any questions? Dualists believe that since capitalist class cannot do the labor, cannot do without the labor class, because howsoever kind of big entrepreneur you are, howsoever big entrepreneur you are, you need your workers to work for you, right? So working class also exerts a strong influence on the capitalist class. So gone are the days of industrial revolutions when this industrialists could actually exploit the worker. The nascent stage of capitalism that we talked about while discussing the Marxist theory. Marxist theory comes as a reaction to the nascent stage of capitalism. You all remember this or not? Mayana, see, it's very important to remember what we have already discussed. It's of little use if we keep learning new things and keep forgetting old things. I'm sure that you people are revising. Please revise. Just don't refer to more n number of sources. See these slides and the PDF files that we have sent. That is all. So pluralists believe that even the capitalist is dependent on the worker, and workers are again exerting influence. So see how they are redefining the established equations of theory of state and theory of power itself. Modern state is not actually a tool by which one class can control over the other class. It is rather a framework which helps in the reconciliation of diverse society interests. Let us try to understand this point. What they are saying, modern state as viewed by other theorists, other exponents of state, other theories of states, that it is an instrument through which one class controls the other class. Marxists would say that the bourgeois controls the state, right, because it has access to resources. Feminists would say that what do they call this? Uh, kind of alpha males. Yes, alpha males control the state because state is an instrument of patriarchy, right? So, of course, so what pluralists are saying that it's not a tool in the hands of a privileged section of society, where maybe according to feminist men through patriarchy, or according to communist, the capitalist through access to resources can control the other classes. Right? It is a framework, a functional arrangement, right? Which helps in the reconciliation of diverse society interest. Reconciliation where everything comes and fall in the line. So it's a framework, it's an arrangement actually. Like uh, a college can be a framework from first year to PhD students. Everyone is having a schedule and you are going there and you have a canteen. So these are the different frameworks of an institution. Similarly, state as an institution has different frameworks. People try to fit into that framework. It's not like this. There is one super cop without reports at the top, which is trying to control everything. Is it all right? Nithya, any question? These 2 points are very simple and clear. Nothing to confuse here to any of you. Pluralist state is simply a state in which there exists no single source of power. Again, uh, rephrasing of what we have learned before. Sovereignty is not indivisible and exclusive. This is something only these people will say. This line will only come from these people. Anyone with an elementary knowledge of, we have to study sovereignty in our optional itself, in your paper 1 part A itself. Okay, before we plunge into Indian government and politics, we have to study sovereignty. Bourdain, Austin, Kautilya, all of them. So all of them will agree that sovereign can be one. Rank 1 is 1, right? Anywhere, rank 1 is 1, whether it's your school, whether it's your college, whether it's UPSC exam. Can there be another rank 1? And what would happen if both students get the same marks? Do you know this? What would happen if both students get the same marks? Age-wise it will be happen. Age-wise it will happen. The senior student, which means who is more aged, will get a better rank. But it rarely happens. Yes, the more aged student will get better rank if there is a clash. Why mention not divisible instead of divisible? Not indivisible. Again, it's a word where you can say indivisible. Divisible you can say, not indivisible because everyone was saying it is indivisible. So they are reacting to it and saying it's not indivisible. Nothing, I mean, there is no strong reason for saying. So this is just a natural reaction. Someone keeps saying A, you react to it and say B. That is how it is. So sovereignty is not indivisible and exclusive. Exclusive means belongs to only one person. Rank 1 is exclusive. Every rank is exclusive. Correct. Your phone is your exclusive phone. I'm sure you don't allow your family members to check your phone. Always keep it locked. So exclusive means which belongs to an individual alone. Sovereignty is not exclusive. It is inclusive. So many other actors, by actor I mean stakeholders, are exerting influence there. So, pluralists enthusiastically support the freedom of profession, political, religious, economic, social, and educational association. Now, why this? The last point. Can someone tell me? Why this last point here? Is this something liberals also say? So, the more institutions there will be, the more fragmented sovereignty would be. Of course, Aditya, right? Yes, yes, yes. This is what I said. Shreyas has also rephrased this. Yes, Nitya, you are also right. Sumana, you are also right. Private institution sovereignty, what does that mean? Which means all these private institutions will have some stake in sovereignty, right? So they will encourage more representation, right? They will encourage it that you are free to practice your profession. There need not be a hierarchy. You are free to practice your politics. The party you choose, the party you want to join on, become a power holder, the religion you are supposed to follow, the economic model, the social cleavage, the educational that you want to have. Let there be so much of so many things. Okay, so the crux of the entire argument is that pluralists have challenged the concept of sovereignty. Why? Until pluralists arrived, until they arrived, which means until this theory came, it was believed by even the Marxists believe. Marxists though do not believe in state, but they know that state will exercise sovereignty. That is why they oppose, right? Because how can you decide for everything? And how can you not be questioned? Liberals will believe in market, so they also say that no, no, you are not sovereign. You are just a caretaker. Necessary evil you are. Pluralists say that let us do away with sovereignty. Let us fragment this because whatever reasons you give, because whosoever will replace a state, this is what happened also, right? When Marxist, when a certain Lenin comes to power, he also exerts, does the same thing, right? You know what Lenin did when he became the uh, premier of Russia after Bolshevik Revolution? The first thing he did was to nationalize the land. All farmers must give up their land. The land belongs to, hello? I said he nationalized the land, so the land belongs to, come on, good, state, nationalized. So again, the same tyranny of state was there, and USSR broke, communism did not. State shall wither away, the ideology itself withered away. So pluralists are saying whosoever will share the power, he will have the same traits. Okay, he will have the same traits, and whichever ideology, we'll discuss China some other time. China does not follow it when it comes to economic model. Political model is same. In fact, President Xi Jinping has elevated himself to the level of Mao Zedong, which means he will remain the lifelong president of the Communist Party of China. Okay, economic model is not communist at all. The political model, of course, is. So they believe that let there be more pluralist belief, let there be more institutions, more manifestations of varied interest, and let people claim what rightfully belongs to them, exert a pressure on the state, keep fragmenting, keep dividing the sovereignty. Can you give me an example of such state which has multiple institutions? I'll give you an example. First, you give me India. How? Sam, how India? Who other than the central government decides on the central list? How UAE? How Iran? How Iran? The influence, like students are saying that let the exams be postponed. And if government agrees to that, can you say that sovereignty has been compromised? And how Iran? Iran has a supreme leader who will have no. Diarchy in British India was not. Why are you confusing it with two layers of government? What is diarchy? Government in the province and at the center, right? Correctly, how USA is a functional democracy. The American government is the sole representative of the people. If India and USA are having a bilateral meeting, who other than the two governments will decide what is to be done? Me and you will decide. Pakistan is the answer. Now give me the names. Three A's. Three A's in Pakistan. Allah, army and America. Remember this. हुरियत कहाँ है यहाँ पाकिस्तान में यार? हुरियत is anything in Pakistan. Hurriyat is reduced to its shadow in Kashmir itself. Who takes that seriously in Pakistan now? Pakistan has three A's: Allah, Army, and America. Someone said this, and without American support, Army cannot exercise its influence in Pakistan. America finds Army more apt to talk to than other institutions. To some extent, India also finds Army in Pakistan more suitable as it's more professional. Other institutions are deeply Islamic. Now, let us try to understand this. It was 2012, and some tense situation was going on between India and Pakistan, as was the norm those days. Someone said that the problem with Pakistan is that they have multiple states. There is ISI, there is Army, there is Mullah, there is Haqqani network, there is Taliban. Haqqani's network was a terrorist group functioning on Afghanistan-Pakistan border some 7-8 years back. They were at their peak. And the problem with India is that we have none. The person who was saying so believed that the incumbent government of that time was not functioning properly under Dr. Manmohan Singh. So the thing is that they have three Islamic theological concept that everything is being painted under religious brush. Okay. That is why we have a concept of OIC. Do you know what is OIC? Organization of Islamic Countries. There is this concept of Muslim Brotherhood in Middle East. Now, these things, they're very much there. They are still very much on paper. Just that the world order is very fastly changing. But even we can, of course, question the extent of influence that America has on Pakistan right now, because American influence is decreasing, Chinese influence is increasing. Still, America has a large say in Pakistan. Until this Afghanistan and Laden thing was happening, America gave billions of dollars to Pakistan in the aids, in the name of Pakistan grid entire resources and funds and weapons that were made available to them. Even the US accepts it. But the thing is that army, in fact, I could not hear. Maybe my volume is low. If you can type your question. So the other institutions are so, yes, going by the definition of pluralism, Pakistan is a pluralist state. Just the definition, not the essential features. It's not like sovereignty is divided so that good things are happening and they are encouraging participation. That's not happening. Now try to understand that there are so many other institutions like the government. So who is having most say in the government? Those who have very well placed religious cards. Okay, you see, it's a state policy. Terrorism is a state policy in Pakistan. Anywhere, God forbid, any unfortunate attack happens anywhere in the world. I'm not talking about India alone. In any country, European country, Asian country, America, anywhere, entire world, what do they do? Every country offers condolence. We also do Kari Ninda, right? Well, terrorism is to be condemned in the strongest word possible. Every country does the same. That we are extremely terror-free world order, and everyone tries to offer whatever help is possible. If you want to use our intelligence, our army, any humanitarian aid, which means if you want some medicine, some food supply, every country, nowhere we are seeing that any country opposes or celebrates. Pakistan is the only country, whenever there is a terror attack, the first thing world does is to condemn it, and the first thing Pakistan does, I am not responsible. I have not done it. And then what happens? They dig it further, somewhere or the other, some connection is found in Pakistan. Somewhere, some connection is found in Pakistan. Wherever any terror suspect is operating, a blast is happening. Maybe he did a 1 month. He was in some Rawalpindi or Peshawar or Karachi somewhere. He has to be there. Whether it was that Germany attack or attacks in Bombay, in America, in Sri Lanka, in Australia. So somewhere Pakistan is responsible. So terrorism has become a state. This is so how to deal with such people? Okay, because it's again a sovereign country. It has crores of people. So the best thing that America and India, certain analysts, not all, certain analysts believe that instead of Islamabad, we should talk to Rawalpindi. Now, why this different city name? Because Islamabad is the capital, Rawalpindi is the military fulcrum in Pakistan. Okay, so instead of Islamabad, because Islamabad is a puppet, Islamabad is controlled by one of the three A's, army, right? So certain section in India, certain analysts, certain foreign policy experts and political theorists believe that talk to army directly. The government is bound. You think Imran Khan is having certain influence? He's an army stooge. He won the elections because army forced the elections. Okay, it applies to almost all regimes of Pakistan. So because of this very thing, America also finds that these are at least they are a professional army. There is a certain conduct which they have to operate. Okay, so they are unlike other deep-rooted Islamic institutions that are present here. So US thinks, largely US thinks that it's better that the three out of these three A, one A permanently exerts his influence on Pakistani state. Otherwise, Allah, again, it would be very religious undertone will be possible, will be there, and it will be very, very difficult for any non-theological state, non-theological Islamic state to have even a bilateral relation with Pakistan. You understood pluralist theory with this example? Sovereignty is divided. Come on, it's you, me, and you can hold our government responsible. Me and you can ask questions to our government. Libya is currently a rogue state. It's not even a pluralist state. Competing parallel governments, as in, give me an example, Hemant. Again, Iraq is more than a pluralist state. It's a rogue state currently. Try to understand this. No. There much has to be done. There has to be a sovereign government. Only then sovereignty will be divided. Okay, the who remains. See, try to understand. Sovereignty is an essential feature of state. Me and you, as citizens living in a democracy, a pluralist democracy, of course, not pluralist state, but a pluralist democracy, because citizens are, you know, the differences that exist in India, the fault lines that are there, the versatility, the heterogeneity, the celebrated heterogeneity, actually, the pluralism that we often talk about, unity in diversity stuff. So, of course, there are so many people, and so many people have different parities subject to their constitutional validation. So, we can hold our government to questions. We can ask the government, we can seek responses. If students feel that exams should not happen this time, they have approached the Supreme Court. Supreme Court might give a ruling. Again, I'm not sure. And maybe the government will say, okay, I'll take it after 1 month. It does not mean that government is not sovereign. Okay, government is talking to its own people. Same citizens who have elected this government to power, right? Are you understanding it? So it's not like people were saying since last 6 years, the day Modi ji became Prime Minister, that please correct the history. What it's a fact actually. Whatever history you are learning is a Marxist version. So please do it, please do it, please do it. 5 years they did nothing. In fact, the last time HRD Minister Shri Prakash Javadekar accepted it on public platform that we have not changed even a comma in history books with pride. Now government has appointed a committee. In March it will give its report. History cannot be changed completely, but few chapters will be edited. You will, I can definitely say this, it's certain confirmation is there. There will be more thing about Vijayanagar Empire. There will be more thing about Maharana Pratap and Shivaji and so on and so forth. Okay, which have hitherto remained in few chapters, especially medieval history. So if government does that, we cannot say that government has compromised on the sovereignty, right? And when the decision making is for the people itself, then it's not like it has been compromised. But when it's dealing with some other sovereign country, like, do me and you send feedbacks to government how to take on America and how to take on Pakistan. We don't do that, right? We do not do that. This is very good country. This is very bad country. Of course, there is a certain expectation as a citizen, but then three A's in Pakistan are more influential than the state. You cannot say this about India. In Nepal, it is often said that the Indian embassy in Nepal is more powerful than any other ministry. Okay, so India, of course, was playing still is playing a major role there. So that can be a theory of pluralist theory of state, where sovereignty itself is compromised. The ability to take decision is not between the government and the people, but some external organ. Now, is it all right with you all? Did you understand this thing? Why India and other functioning democracies will not be counted? And why Pakistan is a perfect example of pluralist theory of state? Yes or no? Pluralists visualize the state as a mechanism which signifies all the interest of every member of the state. Okay, that's not happening in Pakistan. That's why I said it's happening only at the elementary definition of theory, not in the essential characteristic. And it works because it is not possible for the political process to directly represent the views of every single member of society, as modern societies are little complex. Therefore, a plurality of pressure group act as a voice for all members. Same thing. There are different fault lines and fissures in every society. My representation would be someone from me, someone from what I'm doing, the age group that I belong to, the profession that I'm involved in. Okay, the political views that are dear to me, the isms that are sacrosanct to me, and it applies to all of you. Okay, so when we send our own representative, which means there can be an institution, like you have a student union. I'm sure there was a student union in your college. How many of you were part of your student union? Like in Delhi University, there is both this student union and teachers association, DUSU and DUTA. You were the head of your union. Oh my God. Good. Very good. You were also head. You don't have any union. Why do we have unions? Because people believe that certain section can be best represented within someone from the section. Right? So plurality of pressure groups. Like, can you name few pressure groups in India apart from student union and teacher union? No, not RSS. RSS, I'll tell you the history of RSS. Sabka Malik Jantu, ye kya hai? Press is not a pressure group. Mazdoor Sangh would be. Labor Union would be. CITU, good. NGOs, AICTU, good. You say Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh, don't say RSS. RSS ka hi part hai Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh. You know this? So this is Jagran Manch. RSS says that I'm a socio-cultural organization. Okay. This is what their charters say. What about FICCI? What about CII? Chamber of Indian Industries? Aren't they pressure group before Finance Minister of India? There are corporate pressure groups, right? So environmental organizations are there. PETA is one. Amnesty has been banned. So let's not talk about things that are not functioning right now. So these are the pressure groups. And pressure groups will always function in democracy. That this you have to study in your paper to GS also, how pressure groups at times help democracy function in a better way. But when pressure group tend to act as sovereign, you have talked about amnesty. I'll give you an example that USS said. This was before 2010. Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister of India, and USS said 2008 exactly that India is doing violation of human rights in northeast of India and Kashmir. So let Amnesty International come there and examine whether they are doing it or not. Which type of pressure group was this? Something that was challenging the very idea of a sovereign Indian state, correct? The type of pressure group that the pluralists believe in, yes or no? Right? It was a kind of pressure group when Amnesty International would come to India to see whether the state of India is committing atrocities in Northeast and Kashmir. The government of the day under Dr. Manmohan Singh said no. And you know what is the line that they said? It's an insult to, if at all there are some questions. Opposition political party a pressure group? Not exactly, because there is a limited thing that they can do. At best, what can they do? Uh, because they are the part of same executive, and they are supposed to make law in the same legislative framework. So they are not pressure group. People who approach opposition with different views than the government, they are pressure group. Okay, suppose 500 people go to Congress and say that please ask government to withdraw CAA. That 500 people would be pressure group, not the Congress. No, pressure groups don't have the mandate to run the government, but they hinder the functioning of the government. Like, can you imagine this? What the government said, that if there is a violation of human right by Indian armed forces in northeast of India and Kashmir, Supreme Court is here. Supreme Court is an impartial, independent judiciary. So, if at all, so your demand that amnesty should come and check whether it is happening or not, it's an insult to the independent judiciary of a sovereign country, is what India said, and very rightly. Perfect, 10 by 10. What would have happened otherwise? Amnesty comes, amnesty does what he believes they believe in, okay, and then they come up with a 10,000 page report. I call it atrocity literature, and then they publish it in foreign journals and magazines, and then they say India is doing this to its own countrymen, and UNHRC will pass a resolution for that, and India will be leveled as, so sovereignty would be severely compromised. Is it all right with all of you? This happened in 2008. Any question here? Criticism. Too expectant about the state and the government. State cannot act as it should be. As a truthful broker, as it is impossible to govern without using power and without favoring certain power and political groups. How can state be a broker among various power wielders? That the farmers union will come, the capitalists will come, the students would come, the middle class would come, and all of them will have their own share in the pie that is called sovereignty, and then state will try to adjust. That does not happen at first. Okay, it is impossible to govern without using power. There will be complete chaos, right? If state is not having, see, state has responsibility to govern us. State is accountable to us, and responsibility perfectly cannot be carried by in the absence of accountability. So when you have to have a mandate to serve people, there are certain do's and don'ts. So in order to make the people follow that do's and don'ts, there has to be exercise of power. Would lockdown be possible if government does not put up police on the roads? It's not possible. Government at times there are curfews in several cities, whatever be the reason. So authority is shown, right? Muscles are flexed so that people are scared that they do not indulge in the activities or the things that they are not supposed to do. Correct. So government cannot exist without using power. And whenever any government, howsoever all inclusive and sabka saath, sabka vikas, they say, there is always a tilt. They are also human biases. How can government, people working in the government cannot have their biases? Right? There is a tinge, there is a manifesto that every party releases before the election. Some party is chosen to govern the country. They execute their manifesto. Correct. So there will always be certain amount of favoritism in the government. This cannot be done away with. At best, it can be minimized. Okay. So state cannot act as a broker between different stakeholders to the power. First point is okay with all of you. Second, you see, if sovereignty is divided among various associations existing in society, this division will lead to devastation of sovereignty. Sovereignty is numero uno, one. there cannot be a challenge. If it's challenged, it's not sovereign. What will happen? Chaos will happen. Right? Chaos will happen. And there will be a perfect disaster for recipe for disaster. What would happen if different institutions or different individuals start framing India's foreign policy? Okay, Modi ji goes and talks to the President Trump. Someone also goes and again talks, no, Modi ji was wrong, talk to me. It's not going to happen. Union Finance Minister presents a budget and the next day someone else presents a budget. There has to be some coherence. And where will that coherence come from? From the exercise of the sovereign, from the sovereign itself. The coherence flows from the sovereign. And if you divide that sovereignty, there will be incoherence in all walks of life, all institutions that the government is a part of. And that's a perfect recipe for disaster. We will create more problems what we are trying to solve with this pluralist theory. Okay, if society is acting as a threat, when you try to divide that, it will create more problems. Are you? Yes or no? No doubt to anyone here. Why pluralist theory of sovereignty is not, it's just a theoretical thing. Can you, which government will want to part away with its sovereignty? And why would it part away with its sovereignty? Right? Government by definition are sovereign. No, no. Pakistan is following it. Pakistan is following it, but then we are saying it. They don't say it. You will never hear Imran Khan, or for that matter, any previous president or prime minister of Pakistan saying that I need to ask the ISI and the army. See, every country has a military. Let me tell you something, a fact. Every country has a military. Pakistan is the only military that has a country is Pakistan. Only military that has a country is Pakistan. But the head of the state will never say this. Every theory, see, read Sumana's question. Why is that every theory we read so far never worked out? See, I'll give you the answer. Just a minute. I need to see how many points I need to cover. Okay. Why are we reading it out? So that we are aware of the limitations that the theories possess. Okay. So that we become aware of the limitations, and tomorrow as future bureaucrats, when you will be joining the government and executing and framing the policies, you know where a particular theory falls. What would be the limitation if you, that is why we say that we need to avoid extremities. Don't take any theory, any thinker, any ideology for granted. Somewhere or the other it is bound to fall. Do not get attached to things at this young nation stage, all of you. Okay, learn these tenets, know about these things, then develop an opinion. And when you will learn these things, when you will discover what they go into, then you will know that thing is true. There's something called Syadvad in Jainism, which you will study in your ancient history. I'll give you an example. Very quickly, I'll give it to you. That it's a legitimate question. Like people, students, trying to read these things. Political science as optional, which is doing so well in the civil services exam. You know, the cutoff of pol science in DU has skyrocketed. When I took admission, there were 2 to 3 courses: BCom, English, and economics. The top 3 courses. There was no second list for these 3 courses. Now it's the political science. It's all because of UPSC. This optional has soared after 2013 like anything. So what was in my time 75 was the cutoff, 95 is not the cutoff. You get 95%, you don't know you will get a Pol Science honors in reputed campus college, the campus. So as students who are studying these theories, they might wonder that why are we studying it when they have not worked? This is the reason you are studying it. Okay, this is the reason, that to make you aware that nothing is 100% correct in political science. This is like Syadvad. What happened in Syadvad? Jains have this concept of Syadvad or Anekantvad. There is a difference between the two, but you can treat it as synonym. 7 blind men come across an elephant. I repeat, 7 blind men come across an elephant and they touch the elephant. So once the elephant passed, the 7 blind men were brought and they were asked, describe how the elephant looked like. So someone who touched the legs of the elephant said that he looked like a pillar. Someone who touched the trunk said he looks like a long rope. Someone who touched the tail said, no, it's a short rope. Now tell me who was right and who was wrong. Who was right and who was wrong? The rope one, the long run, the trunk one, the pillar one. Which one was right? Which one was wrong here? No one was completely right. No one was completely wrong. We view things as we are. All of us have certain limitations. See, you try to describe something, anything you try to describe, okay, little gyan other than political science I would give here, and then I'll quickly wrap it up. And if the class extends, it's your fault because you are getting me into all this. When we try to describe anything, we are describing ourselves. Right or wrong? Because the family that we are born into, the schools, the colleges that we went into, the relatives that we have, the books that we have read, the courses that we have had, the friends that we have, all have made their silent impact on us. It would be foolish for us if you try to act outside it. You will sound like that wannabe, the MTV wala, roadies. Don't be that degenerated people. So all of us are conditioned. All our truths are conditional truths. This is why we read these theories. All our truths are conditional truths. Nothing is absolute. Even your fundamental rights are not absolute. Under Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, right? Are you convinced or should I explain more? That is why we read these theories. Because we need to know which political and which administrative theory will fit under which condition. They are condition specific. The Marxist theory, because capitalism was cities on the workers, so a Karl Marx comes. Theory comes. Because absolute sovereigns were acting as Marx, that pluralist theory comes. Let us move now. It is a mere illusion and not a reality that other associates are equal in status to state. Now, they believe that different stakeholders, they are not wrong altogether. Everyone has its utility. Everything has its utility. Every theory has its. That's why they are in your syllabus. Okay. Now the first point, it is a mere illusion and not a reality that other associations are equal in status to the state. Okay. Now why we are saying this? We are saying this that because you think that sovereignty will be divided and state will be brought to its knees, it's an illusion. Nothing is beyond state. Actually, Mussolini said this. So, but again, state is the top. Howsoever powerful stakeholder you are in the power, not every country is Pakistan, right? There is just one Pakistan. No other country has achieved that height. The unique distinction of not having a democratic government function for its entire duration. Do you know this? So the thing is that howsoever strong actors there are, state will always remain at the top. If you try to challenge it, which the pluralists are suggesting that you fragment it, state can do a crackdown also. Okay, so other associations or institutions are not equal in status to the state. Rank one. Okay. Second, Lasky, Harold Lasky. I will study him in pluralism and this sovereignty also. Main supporter of pluralism has also gone to the extent of condemning pluralism. See, the one who brought the theory is criticizing it and stated that it has not closely studied the different sections of society. Now, he is not criticizing the theory, he is criticizing the implementation of the theory. That because you have not properly analyzed the different sections of society, so you are unaware of their aspirations, and that is why what stakes they want to have in the formation of the fragmentation of sovereignty. That we shall see more, this point we shall see more in sovereignty Bonaparte. But again, Lasky says that pluralists have not seen the different kind of sections of society. That is why they do not know with exact confirmation how much stake to sovereignty each section will claim. Again, if sovereignty is divided among various associations existing in society, these associations will be so dominant that it would be difficult for the state to have a control over these associations. Now, tell me, are we not creating a bigger problem than the already existing one? If your state is a problem, then there are institutions that can fix the state. Democratic institutions, constitution can fix the state, right? The moment you say that there will be other, so again, going with the same example of Pakistan, where do people get justice from? The elected government, Imran, or the army, Bajwa, or the ISI, Pasha, or the Hakamis? Who is at the receiving end? The citizens are, correct? So if there are different stakeholders of sovereignty, again, they all become very dominant. You have problems with what it take, and nothing will be done with certainty. Any questions here? We are done with the pluralist theory. India is a pluralist democracy. India is not having this pluralist concept of theory of state. India should not have this. We are a sovereign state, that's it. There is no pluralist theory of state in India. Democracy is plural here. Ram, this is a hypothetical question. When will Pakistan change and come under government control? For that you need to understand. I'll answer your question, Krishna. Just let me answer now. Under which circumstances Pakistan was formed? On the basis of religion, right? So once you study your modern India, you will have an understanding of Pakistan, the formation. Or there is this beautiful book. Don't read that for now because you will be having a depression actually. So when you will study modern India as per the UPSC syllabus, then you will understand that why Pakistan behaves the way it is behaving. Okay, because you will understand what Jinnah wanted, what Liaquat wanted, okay, what Iqbal wanted, the founding fathers of Pakistan, what Muslim League was there. Okay, so now I am sure your question is a sentiment of all the students, right? All of you share Krishna's sentiments. How do we remember all the theories by comparison and contradictions? I know. See, compare and contradict. You need to have the content. You all agree? How do you compare without content? So now we have a content. Okay, the lectures are here. You have understood the concept. The PPTs are with you. The PDFs are with you. Sumana, I'll come to it. First, chronologically, I'll answer everything. So first thing is that you have the content. Now, before you go for comparison and contradiction analysis, you need to revise your content. Because you will to forget and then you will again turn, then that would be a state of confusion. Don't do that. First, you revise it at least 2 times. Don't try to memorize it. Just go through it. A casual reading once or twice will serve the purpose. Okay. A casual reading once or twice will serve the purpose. Do that. After that, like pluralist theory, make flowcharts. See, try to understand, because we are studying these things for the first time. That is why I have given such elaborate slides, and I've asked you certain things that you need to study the PDF files. There are more PDF files coming your way. Trust me. We are now starting with the Western political thought in next class. So now the real political science will begin, and you will enjoy it to the core. So the thing is that try to condense your notes. Okay, you read the slide, you read the PDF, you read other study materials that are provided by us, and you try to, like, I'll tell you something. I have often asked my students to, within 20 pages, entire Western political thinkers should be condensed. Use flowcharts. Do not write complete sentence. Plato, right? Plato, there are certain ingredients within Plato. Small points, and then all small points will be dealt in this much of space through arrows, flowcharts, and this. So you do this here also, like pluralist theory, Marxist theory. Believes in state, does not believe in state. Are you understanding it? Krishna, did everyone understand how you condense your notes while revising? First revise and then make it on your own. Then you will never forget, you will never do a mistake. How do you remember the names and thinkers? Now, Sumana, answering your question. See, at the outset, it sounds like there are so many people involved. They are not. Of course, there are a dozen names. At least 20 names are there in paper 1. If you include IGP names you will be aware of. You know Ram Guha and Yogendra Yadav and Pratap Bhanu Mehta and Noam Chomsky. But these thinkers that we'll be using in IGP, those names you know, these thinkers you don't know. Okay, so 15 to 20 thinkers will be repeated. Lasky, Bodin, Austin, Harold, J.D. Cole. Okay, these people will come and they are saying the same thing. They are saying the same thing. Manifestation and variations are always there. But like today, pluralist theory, there were 5 to 6 names I mentioned. You just remember 2 to 3 names. Okay, just remember, revision is the key. First time, how many of you know driving? I guess everyone. Were you able to drive in the top gear first day itself? Yes. Who is this? Michael Schumacher? Vishnu. Were you able to drive your car or your bike in top gear from day 1 itself? It took you some time, some practice, right? So same thing applies here also. It looks tough now. Believe me, it's not. Just a matter of few days. When I also studied it for first time, like, why do they keep such names? Why can't they keep simple Indian names? This was the first reaction that I felt as a college student, that why such complicated names, G, Cole, and this and that. Okay, you also thought the same. I also thought the same. But then these names become familiar because the same theories we read, same thing we study, same material, same names are there, right? First time when I studied Milton Friedman and Thomas Friedman, I was like, man, they sound, very scary. Milton Friedman, Thomas Friedman, F.A. Hayek. No, nothing like Ratta. You just understand these. You understand there's nothing to be Ratta here. All science is not Ratta, please. Somewhere in constitution you have to do some Ratta, but again when you understand the articles, there is no Ratta needed there also. A revision with an open mind. Try to remember the examples that I gave you. Read these slides like a pluralist theory. 3 is Pakistan. That is it. Entire pluralist theory will be summed by 3 years of Pakistan. You can write this in exam. Okay. Reading is needed, not Ratta. Just read it. You have understood it. Now casually read it 1 to 2 times. You will understand it. Try this at least. And one more thing I want to tell you. I don't know how you people study. Like 5 more minutes, okay? Like how do you study? You study. You have a chair and table, and you study maybe at night. I would still advise get up in the morning. Don't be a nocturnal creature. But still, if you are comfortable studying at night, then there is much that I would say. Please do not do things like this. Like I will complete entire theory of state tonight, and then I'll sleep. So you have your dinner. You keep a cup of tea. This is how I used to study, and in fact, I had a bottle of tea, warm thermos of tea. So you say that 10 p.m. I am studying. I am sitting to study. Now, unless I complete this, I will not sleep. So at 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning, you go to sleep, right? I think this is what all of you do. Or maybe you if you are someone who rises up in the morning, then 5 a.m. you sit and then you say, until I complete this, I'm not going to leave this chair. This is what you do, I guess. See, just one change I want from you. No, don't do that. I know all of you do. Allot yourself the resource first. Think like a political science student. Allow yourself the resource. What is your resource? The resource is your time. So 2 hours, and I have to study 30 or 40 pages. Your efficiency will increase 100%. 2 hours, then your WhatsApp will not ping. Okay, your Facebook will not ping. Your Telegram notifications will not come. Keep your phone in silent mode or flight mode. Okay, allot yourself the resource. Allot yourself 2 hours, and then you say that I have to study 30 pages or whatever pages you have decided within 2 hours. You see how your efficiency will increase. If you allot yourself entire night, if there are resources are endless, then efficiency will suffer. Train your mind accordingly. See, human mind is a beautiful device and instrument. You can train it the way you want. Okay, you have to first visualize within, then it will be executed. So allot yourself the time, number of pages are to be covered, and then see with what sincerity you cover it. Maybe you will not be able to study 30 pages as you promised yourself, but the 20 pages or 25 pages, you will study it in such a beautiful way that you will remember it for the rest of your life. So allot yourself the resource and then execute it. Try it for a week and tell me if you find any difference. Okay, everyone please try it and see if you find a difference. Take at least 4 to 5 days or maximum a week to implement it, and no disturbance while those 2 hours. Okay, I'll do that. Sam, I'll do that, no issues. Some other day, I'll definitely do that. And see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll starting with Western political thinkers, the WPT.